Thanks for taking the time to come by this afternoon. I'm going to give you a bit of an update in relation to the bomb incident at the court building yesterday. I'm just going to walk you through a bit of a timeline. Investigation is continuing, so I may not be able to answer all of your questions. But as I walk through this timeline, hopefully you'll be able to have a better understanding of what happened, some of the information that we had, and some of the decisions that we made based on that. So at about 9:15 yesterday morning, a male entered the court building at 6th Avenue and 5th Street Southwest. He approached the security checkpoint. He had a bag in his possession. He placed the bag into the tray, at which point the tray went into the X-ray device. A sheriff who was assigned to that X-ray machine, who incidentally has a number of years' experience with airport security, identified a suspicious-looking item in his contents. A couple of other sheriffs were involved. These two other sheriffs had some previous military background. One reached in, took out the item, actually opened up the item that I could describe as looked like a wallet. When he opened up that item, he could clearly see things that were very concerning. He could see batteries, he could see wires, and he could see a hard substance of some kind within that item. He immediately closed it, placed it back into the tub where it was in the X-ray machine, and they began to question this individual. They weren't able to get information from the suspect, who was denying knowledge of the contents of the package, or even acknowledging that item was his. So he was taken into custody, and our tactical members were called. So upon arrival, and actually even before arrival, we had the photo from the X-ray machine forwarded to our tactical members, and they made the initial assessment, determined the threat level at that point, made an assessment about suitable cordon off area, worked with our downtown command folks, set up that area, and then responded to the scene, along with our other emergency response partners, EMS and fire, including hazmat and the CBRN folks. At that point, the tactical guys spoke with the three sheriffs that were involved, got a little bit more information, what they actually saw, confirmed that the photo that they had sent to them was in fact this device, were directed towards, and when I want to say device, I'll say the item, were directed to where the item was, had a cursory look at that particular item, and then one of the bomb techs actually went to where the suspect was, who is now in our police custody, and had some initial discussions with that individual. Those discussions did not reveal a great deal of additional information. In fact, I understand the individual kept denying that he knew anything about the contents of the package and the actual item that was found, as not knowing what was in it other than identification. At that point, there was the threat level, as you can imagine, was considered to be high. The tactical members at that time starting to make assessment as to the size of the item and the potential detonation impact that it may have. But they also took into consideration that in the event that this was a CBRN incident, that if something were to be released into the atmosphere, that they wanted to extend the cordon area a little larger. So that's why the cordon at that point was extended a little bit further than it was. They made the assessment as to how they would like to have the item removed. At the same time, we had investigative units talking to the individual involved. So while the interviews are going on with the suspect, the tactical team came, and you can see from the coverage yesterday, they chose to deploy the robot, and one of our tactical bomb experts in a bomb suit went into the courthouse, were able to remove the item from the X-ray machine, take it out to the explosive transport vessel, took it to the render safe site, at which point they were able to have a little bit closer look at it, use some of their other testing equipment. A number of swabs were taken of the item, but all came back negative for known explosive devices. And I just wanted to emphasize that the swabs will identify known explosive devices, but in this world we don't know exactly often what we're dealing with and what new things may be coming out on the market. So they could confirm at that time that it didn't appear to have any known explosive factors. They were also able to determine that from their examination that the item contained all the components necessary for an improvised explosive device. They saw the power source from the batteries, they saw the wires, and they could also determine this substance, this solid-looking substance. So not to put any of the officers, our tactical officers, at risk, they deployed 2 robots to open up the item and to try to actually remove the contents. Unfortunately, despite those efforts, they were not able to pull the contents out of the item, so they had to take other measures to neutralize the item. And in the course of doing that, some of the contents of the device were damaged. At the time, CBRN tests were also done, proved negative. Absolutely, they confirmed that the item did look homemade. And in the opinion of our tactical bomb experts, they did not feel that this item was legitimate. And when I say that, had any legitimacy, I guess legitimacy other than it seemed to be a homemade device of some kind. So there was no legitimate market or a legitimate item that they could compare it to. Following the inspection, following the disruption, they were then able to have a closer look at all the contents. They were able to, they could see the battery, they could see the wiring. They were able to have a look at the contents. They will continue to have a look at that. They also forwarded the photo and the information they had through our police intelligence network, CATSA, which is Airport Security Screening, Homeland Security, the Law Enforcement Bomb Network, and we're able to confirm that nobody has seen an item like this in their experiences. With regards to the response, it was a balance between public safety and public inconvenience. The consideration was made not only for the explosive potential but also for the CBRN potential. There's protocols that are followed in responding to these. I can say that the response protocols are a national standard. All of our bomb techs, in fact all bomb techs across Canada, are trained at the same place and are trained to the same standard. And additionally, we had the support of the fire department and their hazmat folks as well at the scene. Now with regards to the subject, well, he was of course taken into custody. I can confirm that there was a bit of a language barrier. It resulted in us having to bring in an interpreter, and at the same time, like everybody else, he was afforded the opportunity to speak to a lawyer. He exercised his rights at that time not to speak to us, and so we weren't able to get any further information. We did manage to identify through the investigation a potential address. We also were able to identify a vehicle, and it was actually one of our bomb techs in the initial discussion with the suspect was able to determine that the vehicle might be at the Marlborough Mall area. So based on the information that we had, just the background checks that we were doing on this person, as well as the information the bomb tech was able to get in that initial kind of cursory interview, we were able to locate the vehicle at Marlborough Mall. That vehicle was cordoned off. Initially, we brought in a couple of our explosive dogs, and we did a cursory search of that vehicle. There was no indications given by the dogs as to the presence of explosives. Interviews continued right into the late hour of last night, and we, right from the start, had a Crown prosecutor assigned to this case who was monitoring all the information that was coming in, both from the tactical side as well as from the investigative side. We had to determine who this fellow was, his reasons to be at the court, if there was any history that might be of concern, and then base that on what we had found at the scene as well as what Tactical had. Unfortunately, at the time, it was determined that we didn't have grounds for a warrant on the home. And actually, at the conclusion of our interview attempts throughout the night, it was determined that we didn't have grounds to detain him any longer, so he was subsequently released. However, the investigation is far from over. We're going to continue on with this. We have a lot of unanswered questions. I can say that there were no explosives found in the item, although all the components for that were present. So, we need to determine why an item like that was on his person, why it was brought into a courthouse, why it came to be. So there's a little bit of work that has to be done on that. But absolutely, the investigation continues, and if there's any more information, we'll update you as soon as we can. So I'll try to answer whatever questions that I can.
Forgive me, I'm a little confused though. There was no explosive device found?
There were no explosives found.
No explosives?
Right. So all the components for an improvised explosive device were present, but the substance, the solid matter that was contained within was not explosive.
What precipitated, I guess, being kicked up from the possible explosive device to go into CBRN? Or was that just like precaution?
Well, yeah, and that really is just considering all potential risks and all potential factors that could play into this. So while you have a very small package that would have, depending on the type of explosive, and our experts will be able to determine that detonation impact. Part of our job is to determine potential risks and other factors that may not be present. And one of those could this potentially be part of something else CBRN related that is going to be released into the atmosphere? And so those considerations, the fact that we didn't know what we were dealing with, we see the components of potentially an IED, but we didn't know what those actual components were. That's just a kind of a smart decision to say, let's factor in everything and include that if this potentially is a CBRN incident, have we taken the necessary safety precautions for the people in the immediate area? And that's why the cordon was as large as it was.
Now, there are many things that could go through security at the courthouse that would have the elements of an IED. What was it that separated this from the many other things that the sheriffs see there? I mean, was it the fact that it was homemade or self-made?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously on the screen, it was something that in the mind of a very experienced X-ray technician who now is employed by the sheriffs was enough to stop, have a look, and require some additional secondary questioning. The other sheriff that came over physically reached in and actually grabbed it and opened it up, and that's when the visual confirmation was made that something's not right. We can see wires, we can see batteries, and we can see some kind of substance in there, and that's when the wallet was closed and put back. And then, what typically would happen is there's a conversation between the person who just put the items in there and the X-ray technician or the officers involved, in this case the sheriffs, and there was not a suitable response or a response enough that satisfied them that this was nothing to be concerned about. In fact, in their mind, the response probably was the opposite, that now this is even more suspicious than ever, and that's why they took him into custody, called us, and then, and even in follow-up to that, we have a bomb tech and some investigators who are talking to this individual, and we're not getting any answers. In fact, we're getting some denial as to, I don't even know what you're talking about, don't know what that is, never seen it before. So, when you have an expert, a sheriff who has some military background that opens this item up and goes, wow, this isn't right, puts it back, and then we're getting nowhere with questioning. I think it was just a very prudent deployment of how this should have gone. I mean, the system worked. We have a sheriff whose job is it to look at items so that they don't get past that security checkpoint, recognizes something suspicious, makes those cursory questions, follows up with the proper response to call the police, and then, like I say, the protocols that were followed with response to something like this, a national standard, were really rolled out. So, I mean, there's some questions yesterday as to why did it take so long. It does take time. It takes time to assess this. Our number one priority is public safety. But we also have to be mindful of the safety of our officers and the people who are right in there actually dealing with this incident. So they're not going to rush. I mean, in this world, it's not run up, grab the bag, shake it, and if it doesn't go off, we're good to go. So there's a lot of things that have to happen and a lot of processes and protocols and safety measures that have to be taken. And basically that was exercised yesterday with the mind of public safety at the forefront. Yep.
Were you able to determine what he was doing there? Did he have a court date?
Yep, he had a legitimate reason to be there. It was a non-criminal related matter, but he did have a time and date that he was supposed to be there. So he was there for legitimate reasons. Yeah.
Obviously,
No, go ahead.
was this person known to the Calgary Police, RCMP, or Sheriff's previously?
To the best of my knowledge, no, but I don't know if we have a whole lot of information on this individual yet. But initial indication is no.
So, sorry, after, talking to him through an interpreter, was he still sticking to his story? Oh, I don't know what that is, I don't know how it got in my bag?
Yeah, and then at some point exercised his right basically just not to talk to us at all. So the information that we were getting was limited to then almost nothing. So we weren't able to get the information or confirmation or things that we needed to move this along or to confirm or otherwise what that item might be. And that's why we had to go through the process that we did.
But it was obviously a handcrafted device.
Yeah.
So
So in the opinion of our experts, our bomb experts, as well as the sheriff who initially handled it, no question in their minds that this was a homemade device. And like I was saying, our bomb tech said this, there's nothing legitimate looking about this. This was a handmade something. It just is not something you buy off the shelf. There's a handmade component to it.
So the whole thing was a hoax?
Okay. Well, we don't know that. I think if there's one thing that we have learned through our policing partners and incidents that have happened around the world, that it's not uncommon for dry runs or test runs to be done. Not saying that this is the case, and in fact it may not be. It may in fact be a hoax. But certainly this wouldn't be uncommon, and that's why we have to treat it serious, and we're going to continue to treat it serious, even though we found that through disruption there was no explosives, and we haven't found anything up to this point with regards to his background. It is still a very serious incident, only because what we saw of this device, how it was constructed, and the components of it, a lot of whys that have to be answered here still.
But he was released without facing even a minimal charge.
Well, yeah, and in the opinion of the Crown and the best efforts of our investigators, unfortunately there are certain thresholds that have to be met for us to keep somebody in custody, and at this point we hadn't met those, and so he was released. But certainly the investigation is not over, and we're still working. We have a full team of investigators today still following up on this.
That, if he was released, I would assume that means you weren't able to take the car in possession either?
That's correct. We did we were able to do the cursory search of the vehicle with our explosive dogs. We were able to look inside and see the contents, but as far as having the grounds to obtain a warrant for that vehicle or a warrant for the home, we weren't able to get that.
When you talk about kind of, the possibility of it being a dry run, obviously you as a police organization and people who are in charge of public safety are prepared for this, but this was a huge thing to implement. Blocks of downtown closed off, obviously the stress on the officers to figure out what exactly was in that bag. Can you speak to what it's like to actually have to implement that?
Well, what I can say is these protocols are in place and have been in place for some time. We're trained to this. We know what we have to do. We know as far as what to look for, certain things, certain criteria, certain thresholds. We have the equipment, we have the training, we have the experts in place to do that. So really to execute it, although it requires a lot of manpower, processes, protocols are in place to do that. With regards to dry run, and I'm not saying that it absolutely is this is a dry run. All I'm saying is that as a policing organization, learning from our policing and security counterparts around the world, that wouldn't be uncommon. So what we're saying is, although what we see components are present for an IED. And while the explosives weren't there, there's the big why is why this item, why were all these things in it, why was it brought to a courthouse? So, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get those answers. But at this point, I think the measures that were taken based on the information that we had were absolutely proper, and with the public safety is our number one concern.
How scary is it for you guys though?
Well, I mean, you have a heightened awareness. You see the kind of precautions that are taken, and while frustrating at times, for the public, our officer safety is important. So, anytime you're dealing with a potential explosive device or a weapons complaint or anything that could have potentially fatal consequences, you can train, and we have the finest of training, and our officers are prepared for that. But, certainly this was a very heightened incident yesterday, and you could see that everything was done from a precautionary point of view to ensure everybody's safety.
You mentioned that, I'm trying to answer the question of why now, but how are you going to do that without having the suspect?
Well, we have lots of work to do. We have to do some background checks on the suspect. We'll work with our intelligence partners right around the world. We'll start following up on family, friends, associates, that type of thing. We'll try to continue talking to this individual. I mean, we're not, just because we find a device and it's disrupted and we find no explosives, we certainly didn't wipe our hands and go, okay, well, that's done. It was a nothing. Thanks for coming. This was a serious incident, and so it's going to be investigated and handled that way, and we'll keep digging until we have those answers.
Kevin, is there any indication, sorry, Doug, any indication that there's any connection or perhaps a suggestion of vulnerability as a result of the labor dispute that occurred in that building in the previous 2 days?
No, I can say at this point anyway, the information we have is there's absolutely no connection whatsoever. And in fact, the folks, I can't praise the sheriffs who were involved enough. I mean, very switched on, experienced people who actually executed to perfection what they're trained to do and what we would hope that they did. So there's no connection that we're aware of at all to that.
The interpreter that was brought in to help you question the suspect, what sort of cultural background did that person have, and what language did he speak?
I don't know that. I'll have to find out. I believe it was African-based, but it's a very unique dialect. But I don't have that answer.
The person you discussed things with, a Canadian citizen?
I don't know. I don't know what their status is in Canada.
Is it possible that he put his bag down somewhere and someone else could have dropped something in it, or is he?
Well, these are the questions we're trying to get answered, and there would be numerous opportunities during the course of a fairly extensive interview to clarify that, but we just have not been able to get those answers. And like I said earlier, he has exercised his right not to speak to us. So we hope to get those answers, but at this point, we're just not getting any answers to those questions.
How
Is
will you
there
give us anything
CCTV of that
about
one?
why he was in the courts? You mentioned it wasn't a criminal matter,
Yep.
but was it for a parking traffic ticket, or was
I think it was a civil matter. I'm just not sure exactly
domestic?
what it was related. I don't know. I just know it was non-criminal, and we're told civil. But,
Is there closed circuit of that particular area?
oh, I believe so. Yeah, and that would be part of that investigative piece. But, for this case, you had the individual right there, and you had sheriffs right there, and they dealt with the matter immediately as it was unfolding. But, yeah, I mean, CCTV absolutely in that area.
Did he try to walk away?
No.
And what's the best way to describe this substance that you're talking? Is it like Play-Doh?
Yeah, I think how it was described to me is kind of a soft, flexible, like plasticine type substance. It was a solid substance from what they could see. But unfortunately, through the disruption, a lot of that was destroyed. So we're back out today, and we're going to try to see if we can identify what the content of that item was.
When you say it was destroyed, so it didn't explode?
No.
There was no explosives?
The disruption technique that we use will destroy some of the
You blew it up.
item. Well, it was a Neutrex, which is a water cannon.
So it wasn't his kid's science project that ended up in his bag?
Well, you know what, again, there was an opportunity to explain that, and we just haven't got that yet. So that's why a lot of questions still, but no answers yet. So, well, that's why we're not done. We're gonna continue on until we get those answers.
Given that there are still a lot of unanswered questions, though, Calgarians might say, what happens if this guy suddenly disappears?
Well, I can't tell you what investigative follow-up's going on, but we're still investigating.
Is this person any more cooperative, having presumably had some explanation of why you guys were so worried? Or is it just complete non-cooperation?
Well, I mean, there were some questions answered, not a lot of questions answered, so it was very frustrating for our investigators, and that's why we'll continue on today. And like I said, there's lots of work to be done. There's the background work, follow-up work, family, friends, associates, people in and around the Calgary area. So we've got, like I said, we've got a full team continuing to work on it, but at this point, despite our best efforts, we didn't get a lot of information from this person.
You're not sure if he's a Canadian citizen?
I'm sure they're sure. I just don't know that answer as I'm standing here.
Can you say how long this person's been in Canada?
No, I don't have that either.
About how old he is?
No, I don't.
Is there age range, like 20?
No, you know what, I wouldn't even want to guess, because I'll be probably wrong. But no, I didn't get that information in our briefings.
Is there any description of candidates?
You know what, again, I didn't get that, which seems like that'd be a very good answer to a very good question, but I honestly don't have that.
So if we wanted to go by, would you provide us with his house address?
No, I won't. All right, any other questions? Thanks. Sorry I took so long explaining it, but I want to make sure that, you know, everybody kind of got an idea walking through the process, the things we were faced with, some of the decisions that were made, and some of the challenges that we face moving forward. Yep.
Is there any way to estimate, I know it's early on, next day, is there any way to estimate the cost involved in the disruption, the court disruption for overtime or any additional costs that you guys incurred?
Well, I can't talk or speak to the courts, but with regards to Calgary Police, I would hazard to guess fire and EMS, these were all on-duty personnel. I know for Calgary Police, everybody that was present were on-duty personnel that came down to the scene as a result of a need. So tactical are citywide. A lot of the containment area downtown was District 1 folks. We would have probably brought in additional resources from outside, but there was no additional overtime or call-out costs required for this one. Now, I can't speak to the courts or any other folks that were impacted by this.
And there were a lot of resources used. Were they brought in from other districts? Did it tax other areas of the city as well?
This is not uncommon. You know, when we have a major incident, you know, you have a big weapons complaint where you've got even a mobile shooter, or you've got a major collision and fatality on a major thoroughfare, you end up having to call in resources and things you had planned to do that day, you just put off to the next day, and we'll just redeploy from whatever areas of the service we need to address and take care of that incident. So in this case, there was no impact at all.